guys, it's the Mad Matster here. I'm doing another video, and this one's called Why I Hate Post Grunge Music. And basically, post grunge music is kind of what I would call bands like fucking, I don't know, Nickelback, Creed, just bands like that, you know, Shinedown, fucking, I don't know if Breaking Benjamin is one of them, that kind of shit. So basically, this is going to be kind of a sequel to my new metal, Why I Hate New Metal video. But what exactly happened in the musical landscape to have it go in that direction? So it's going to kind of cover that a little bit, but I think in America things are a lot different than they are in Europe, even now. And that's a real problem with why it's been hard for me to form different configurations of my bands that I'm in and just basically get the point across of what kind of stuff I like. So in regards to basically what that style of music kind of developed into, it kind of is kind of the brother, the sister, the cousin of nu metal and nu metal. So when I say nu metal, it doesn't mean actually new metal, like new metal bands, like new versus old. It's NU. The press started calling this stuff nu metal and nu metal. So just a little clarification there for anybody that doesn't understand what that means. So what happened in the 90s was there were a bunch of bands that were influenced by the grunge bands like Bush, you know, Stone Temple Pilots. I don't know. They came around sort of the same time as some of the grunge bands. Like, I don't even know if the first demo of Stone Temple Pilots was out. I think it might have been out after Pearl Jam's 10 or at the same time or before. They were influenced by a lot of the same stuff. So I wouldn't count them as a post-grunge band, really. I would consider them alternative hard rock or metal or whatever. And they kind of went into a little different direction later anyway. So I don't know if I'd count them, even though when the first album came out, people were saying that, oh, there's one song that sounds like Nirvana, there's one song that sounds like Pearl Jam, there's one song that sounds like Alice in Chains. Of course, Sex Type Thing would be that Alice in Chains one, but I don't know if I agree with that. I actually like that first album to some extent. Has some cool riffs and stuff on it. I'm not a big fan of the band, but I mean, none of that. Not even Bush, the band Bush, compared to the mediocrity that came to later. I mean, I'd rather listen to that 16 Stone or whatever the fuck it's called a million times before Nickelback's albums or any of those bands. So many times you'll hear about, and no offense to people that are in this demographic, but, you know, at least here in Wisconsin, you'll, from time to time, talk to someone who's like 45 or 50 years old or whatever, and they were into like Iron Maiden and Metallica in the 80s, and you ask them what what the new stuff they like is, and there's these radio stations that play this solid rock stuff. Oh yeah, I like AC/DC, Metallica, Dio. Oh, I love that stuff in the 80s. But man, Shinedown, man, shit, that's like the fucking Metallica of now, or Godsmack, or whatever the fuck is big. So basically, ignoring the trajectory of what happened with traditional metal and how it went into all these different genres, whether it be extreme metal or power metal or prog metal or whatever, or black metal, death metal, doom metal. You know, they kind of like selectively go to the mainstream thing, skipped a lot of the underground stuff, and just go way into this weird radio rock thing as far as liking. And it's usually a working class kind of segment of the population, you know, that kind of got into that. So they may have been into Iron Maiden in the 80s and shit, but they started liking this other stuff. They don't even like metal. They don't even know much about metalcore or even, you know, gent or any of that stuff. I mean, that stuff is actually more middle class than the post grunge stuff. So it's really bizarre that, you know, the mainstream rock they like is either new metal or going into these newer post grunge new metal hybrid bands that people like. You know, I don't even know all the names, but you know, it started out in the late 90s where these bands came around. So it's just really strange. And you know, I'm actually looking at this list of post grunge bands right now. Three Doors Down. Okay, all these albums came out in like, oh, okay, 12 Stones. What the fuck? Okay, I don't know if I could consider all this stuff to be post new metal, but or post grunge. I mean, so Pounce, Collective Soul. Looking for some really brand new bands. Daughtry, yeah, okay, that's kind of funny. They formed in 2006. Earshot, ugh, God. Oh God, they opened for Megadeth once, and it was like this really terrible like record company guys like Columbia recording artists Earshot. It was really fucking so corporate. It was sick. I think they were kicked off the tour, and they were right before Exodus, which was really strange. So I guess Godsmack is seen as new metal / post grunge. Oh my God, that's like the worst title you could ever have. Hailstorm. Now that's really strange. I don't know if I'd count that. It's just more pop rock. Hinder, these bands, fucking Hobostank. I guess Hailstorm's a new. Well, they're actually kind of old, but their popularity is new. I don't know if I count all these bands as post grunge, but just a lot of these bands that are on the radio right now. You know, they play them Seether, fucking whatever. You know. Smile Empty Soul. I forgot what song they had. Oh yeah, we were making fun. Me and my friends were making fun of that shit. God, what the fuck is it called? Bottom of a Bottle, was that it? Just okay. So a lot of this stuff has like these lyrics that are like really terribly teen angst, like I hate everything about you. I hate my fucking life. And it's like this fucking like post breakup like bullshit. Every lyric is about that. It's not even like new metal where there's like rapping and shit. It's like I don't know what's worse than new metal, but basically it has taken over mainstream hard rock for the last 15 years, pretty much. I mean, there's still bands that play this stuff. You know, I would almost say Five Finger Death Punch is like kind of like that, but influenced by a lot of other stuff, like some of the metalcore stuff. And, you know, they kind of have this hybrid sound of shit, but not all their stuff's terrible. Some of the solos are cool, but what are some trappings that what is wrong with this genre of music? Well, it's very commercial. It's very cliched. It's very, you know, very formulaic, and it really. What bothers me more about it is the people that like it just to have no clue a lot of the time about these better bands from around the world, and it kind of took over the landscape. And you know, another person that kind of jumped on that bandwagon is Jeff Tate of Queensryche. He kind of went that route with pushing Queensryche in that direction. Here in the Now Frontier from '94 wasn't a post-grunge album, but it had a lot of those influences on it. It was a little better than the later stuff, though, like Q2K and all this shit. And it's like, well, you know, it doesn't mean that traditional metal is done, or even that sound. I mean, think about the band like Nevermore, bands like Nevermore, or Biomechanical, or some of these power metal bands that still have a lot of traditional metal influences, but they have groove metal or death metal influences, or you know, whatever. It's like it doesn't mean that you have to lose all metal and just go post grunge just because Iron Maiden wasn't as popular. So he continued down that route, And now I guess his new album is kind of like that Operation Mindcrime band he has now. It's like kind of in between the two, like in between Queensryche and Post Grunge Queensryche, which is kind of a scary thought. But and that Operation Mindcrime too, the album by Queensryche was kind of like that. So my big problem with this stuff is that it's very formulaic, and it kind of took a lot out of these band, you know, these. It took. I mean, the fans just were clueless about the fact that there's a lot of good stuff coming out. Like if they're older and they liked a lot of the classic metal bands in the '80s, didn't understand that that sound kind of continued, or that, you know, even like Swedish melodic death metal, you know, it's like that stuff was like, you know, they might like some of that stuff, or some of these underground bands. I know they're not hardcore metalheads, a lot of these people, but it's like, you know, if they don't understand that there's really good stuff out there that's beyond, you know, doing this cliched post-grunge thing, doesn't mean they have to dislike all the post-grunge bands, but it doesn't mean they have to like fucking, you know, Gamma Ray, all the, or whatever, whatever band. Actually, they're like 25 years old now, but it's like one of those things that is kind of weird. So it kind of went with the new metal thing. So another thing that it kind of killed in the music scene is virtuosity and like melody beyond what the grunge bands had as far as melodic influences. So if you had like a shred guitar solo, I mean, now things have changed, but like Five Finger Death Punch is kind of one of the examples I give, because it's like, I'm not a fan by any means, no, but that was kind of like one of the breaking point for a lot of that stuff, is like, oh, they started to have real guitar solos again, or, you know, ones that lasted just more than one measure and stuff like that. So for a long time, it was like, you know, any kind of complex songwriting was out of the question, or any kind of riffs that went beyond this simplistic riff writing kind of thing. To be fair, compared to new metal, a lot of the post-grunge bands had a little bit more, you know, they used a little bit more folky kind of chords, because some of the grunge bands did that. So they kind of took some of that stuff, some of the more, you know, clean guitars and stuff that they did, and it wasn't just as simplistic in some ways as some of the new metal bands. But then there's these bands that merged the two, like Stained. Oh my god, and they all have that fucking sound of the, you know, fucking post Eddie Vedder vocals. So if you heard like some power metal from Europe, you know, has some falsetto or fucking high vocals, or even prog metal, they'd be like, that just sounds 80s, man. Well, you know, post grunge sounds 90s, and that's one of the things that bothers me about trying to tell people about new bands. Like, the post grunge thing sounds really fucking 90s. So it's like Jeff Tate, I think, said something like, I'm not going to sound like I did in the 80s. Well, you sound like you did in the 90s. So where do you really stand when you say that? So just something sounds more 80s versus 90s, or if it sounds 70s versus 80s or whatever, it doesn't mean that it automatically means it's shit. But a lot of people seem to have that opinion. And, you know, metal and hard rock have really gone through a trajectory around the world that really didn't happen in mainstream America as much. I mean, you have black metal. You know, there's this meme that I found. It's really funny. It's like this guy's lifting weights or whatever. I might put it in as the well, no, I'm not gonna put it in as one of the images, but or the thumbnail. But there's black metal, there's death metal, there's prog metal. What's the difference? People say sometimes. Well, whatever, fuck them. You know, what's the difference between bebop and Kenny G? Fuck you. You know, you don't know shit. So if you say something like that, but so yeah, that was one of the things. This meme that talks about all the different types of metal. So the point is, I think the post grunge thing was really polluted a lot of the ethics of heavy metal music in America, because it was like this radio rock formulaic shit that still gets played all over suburbia and in factories everywhere. And a lot of it's just fucking sounds all the same. They have the same vocal style. They have the same kind of riff writing. I can't tell the difference between all that shit, you know? I mean, I mean, at least Nickelback, like they're infamous because you know what they sound like, because that kind of is a little bit of a almost like a, I guess it's a positive thing to say about them. I don't really like attack this stuff relentlessly like I did new metal, because it's just, I don't know, it's kind of harmless and just kind of boring and forgettable, a lot of that stuff, rather than annoying like a lot of new metal was. But it really ruined a lot of the ideas of traditional metal, or even bands that had lyrics about fantasy, or a lot of this stuff. So you had extreme metal in the States that was big, and people just got confused because they think all heavy metal's about like killing people and stuff. And it's like, oh, what about Iron Maiden, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, fucking, or even, I mean, even some of the extreme metal bands like Atheist or Cynic, they have totally esoteric or weird lyrics, about philosophical shit or whatever. Or people just, the post grunge thing really polluted. And in fact, I'd say, in some ways, post grunge is almost worse than new metal, because people got so confused by it. It's like grunge and then post grunge, just it poisoned the well of metal and hard rock. Grunge did in general, even though I like grunge in many ways, a lot of the bands, but it kind of ruined a lot of the ideas. So that's all for this video. Just comment or subscribe or say whatever you want. I just wanted to do a video about that stuff because I was thinking about it the other day, and it was one of those things that I thought I'd bring up. So I'll talk to you soon.